Hello, Troy A. Shadow Electronics. Yes, I am still taking part in the Art Soundoff challenge. I just didn't get a chance to record anything for yesterday. I was going to do another late post like I did last time, but ended up getting so late that it just didn't seem like there was a point to doing it. So, like now I got to start coughing as soon as I start talking. I just didn't get a chance to record one, so I also had trouble coming up with a topic. I've been finding lately that I seem to be returning to a lot of the same old topics, and some of it is just because I think I have something new to say, or there's another example for it, and somebody who may be new to my site will then in turn be exposed to that topic for the first time. I'm trying to come up with more ways to vary my topics, though, to talk about more stuff so I don't, before I start beating a dead horse. I don't think I'm there yet because there are always new examples or some new comment that I need to make a statement on, or some new statement I feel like I should make a comment on, however you want to work that. But it's something I worry about is repeating myself, doing the same old thing over and over. And I also just really want to get back into actual storytelling, which I thought I was going to do this year. I thought I was going to push in on storytelling, and I just was not able to do it because I kept getting sick. So I'm hoping that next year I can finally make the push that I was hoping to make this year. I want to try to make some roads this year, even though I'm not going to be working on Captain Yuletide this year. I'm going to try to get some video stuff done before the end of the year, and hopefully next year I can throw myself into what I was hoping to throw myself into this year. I wonder how many of you out there, because we talk a lot to Art Soundoff talks a lot to the artists, and dang it. And next week I do plan to do a bit more on the artistic side if I can get a few minutes to finish doing my experimenting. I'm going to focus a bit more on the side there. I feel like the art of writing, the writing side of storytelling, doesn't really get as much shown because it's easy to look at a piece of artwork and immediately come to a conclusion about it. To look at the story side of things, I think that's a lot harder. That's why you can't bring a story to a convention. For one thing, the comic, if you wanted to get critiqued by a comic creator, it's tougher for them to accidentally replicate your artwork than it is to accidentally replicate a story idea that you had. So they prefer not to do it because that way, if they do come up with something similar, they don't get in trouble, and whether or not they were actually inspired by your work or not. So I can understand that. And that's one of the things that makes it hard for a comic writer to get as noticed as an artist. And I think it got worse in the 90s when a bunch of Marvel artists left and formed Image Comics, and their big thing is drawing. So their focus was on the art and whatever the heck that was Rob Liefeld was putting out. Yeah, I had to get one in. So it's tougher, I think, for a writer to get into comics. I mean, there are so many writers who like to get into comics right now. Let me dip into the drama a bit and say that a lot of the writers out there now are not really out there to make comics. And I'm not getting too far into it. I'm simply saying that they've gone to novelists, they've gone to screenplay writers and movie writers, TV writers. They're not going as much to the comic writers. They're going for the big names, and they're not looking at people who actually want to write comics. I think that's one of the reasons that I've kind of said maybe I'm not going to get a job with the big two, especially not with it's going on with some of those titles, and I won't get into that. This is Art Soundoff. I said before I'm not going to do that on Art Soundoff. This is not my. This is not something I created challenge. This is created by someone else, and I want to keep the spirit proper. But they've gotten people who really aren't in the business of making comics, or who, for one reason or another, really aren't interested in making superhero comics. They're used to telling young adult stories, or used to telling other kinds of stories in prose. And I don't think that works out quite well because they're not comic fans. They're not comic writers, and you end up with a lot of problems that old comics have, where they get too verbose. There's too much dialogue in the panel, which is tougher on the letterer, who has to get these words in without interfering with the art. I hear a lot of letterers complain for the artists so they don't give them enough space, and then the artists complain that the writer gave them too many words, and so it goes. And that's kind of a problem, and it's kind of a problem right now, because you writers have to go to indie comics. They have to go make their own comics in order to actually be seen as a comic writer. But whether or not that leads them to get picked up to write comics for one of the big publishers, DC or Marvel or Image or Dark Horse or whatever, that kind of remains to be seen. A lot of the people who are doing these indie projects are people who, for whatever reason, want to do it themselves, and not really for a resume. I think a lot of how does a comic writer get noticed by these publishers when their bosses want them to get these big novel names because they're kind of looking down on their own industry? That's probably one of the biggest problems with comics. A lot of the problems that people complain about with modern comics started with the fact that comics have always been so down on themselves as a storytelling medium. And I think that affects the writers because, Stan Lee famously took a pen name because he didn't think being connected with comics would benefit his career. And as it turned out, comics became his career, and I don't think he ever did get to write the great American novel that he was hoping for because he just ended up embracing comics, the way comics tell stories, the freedoms the freedoms that he had making those comics, and just ultimately this was what he became, a comic writer, more or less. You can talk about the Marvel method, and I frankly don't see that, don't kind of question that, but point is, it's tougher out. I think it's tougher out there for a comic writer to get a job. If my skills were up to the level where I probably could indeed write Superman, which would be one of my dream titles, dream characters to work for, because I actually love Superman. He's my favorite superhero. But if I ever got my skills up to that level, I don't know that I could still get the job, because right now it doesn't seem like it's so easy for a writer to get into the business. Now, if there are any comic writers out there who maybe have written these big titles, tell me how you did it. I don't know if I'd be able to replicate what you did. Maybe I couldn't. But I'm kind of curious how, because I see just all the drive now seems to be toward some big name writer who was outside of comics, because comics are so low on the totem pole, as it were. So I feel for the writers out there. Getting a job as a comic artist is easy. It's easy to show what you can do. With a comic writer, there's just so many obstacles against them, and I can't say that I know how to change that at all, because sorry, some of them are just kind of inherent to writing. Maybe now you have to write a novel in order to get a comic. I don't know. But well, that's kind of one of the things that's been running through my mind, and that's kind of what Art Soundoff is about. So, if you want to see more of my writing, see if I do get out of my slump of recurring topics, check out bwspotlight.com. Or maybe if you don't know my point of view on those topics, it'll be a fresh experience for you. And if you, because I do come up with fresh topics now and then, it's not all stale. If all it was the same stale topics all the time, I'd stop doing the site. The fact that I am still coming up with new angles or new discussion topics or new ways to approach it, I think is what's keeping me doing this. So, see how well I do at bwspotlight.com. And if you want to find out more about Art Soundoff, maybe participate before the month ends, head to artsoundoff.com. So I will hopefully be back tomorrow with another Art Soundoff. And until then, I wish you all happy creating.